Hello, I'm Dr. Neesa of Creative Feminine Rising, a platform where women move toward their uniquely inspired creativity through the lens of the sacred, deepening into our body wisdom and opening these powerful channels of creativity. And today, my guest is Lauren Dickinson, and we are talking about Mount Shasta. We are talking about our collaborative efforts with the book called The Mystical Mountain, Mount Shasta and the Emerging New Earth. And I'm excited to hear what you have to say. So you are one of the people, not only did you share your story in this international bestseller, but you are someone who had a deep calling to Mount Shasta. And that is essentially the nature of this book, the callings that people received, and then how the mountain has served as an instrument of transformation. And you share in your chapter that you were living in Texas and your family, your mom, and I believe a sibling or two, was in Mount Shasta. And there was just this clear moment during the pandemic when you're like, I'm going. Tell us more about that. How did that unfold for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny because my whole family ended up coming here at different various points. So it's very interesting. At the beginning of the pandemic, of course, we're all living our lives, and then we get this notification for the 14 days to slow the spread. And I was living pretty much near downtown Dallas. Like they were talking about the lockdowns and stay-at-home orders and all this kind of stuff. And like the long and the short of it is like we didn't know what was going to happen. We had a friend in the military who said had been on the detail for like the Ebola breakout, and he kind of gave us a little glimpse of what it could look like, and all these pretty significant lockdowns for a while. And we just, Trump at the time was talking about shutting down domestic flights and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, there is no way that I want to get stuck here in Dallas away from my family, you know. And so it was really just like a quick decision. I just packed up everything that I needed to into my car, and my two cats, and drove the 28 hours to get out here. My mom was already here. My brothers came a year and a half, I think 2 years after she came. So they were living here in Shasta. And then here I was coming along. March 9th, I believe, is my 5-year anniversary. And then my sister came 2 years later. So we literally are all here. And
Wow.
that first year, yeah, I didn't know if I was going to go back or not, but this is how the divine works and how the universe, orchestrates things. Is my landlord at the time from Dallas, she decided to sell her home. And so that was it. She's like, "Hey, I'm selling the house, come get the rest of your stuff." And it was kind of like the closing of the chapter of that part of my life. And so I made arrangements to get the rest of my stuff and said, "Well, I don't know how long I'm going to be here in Shasta, but I'm here for now." And then that's when everything kind of changed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your story has a very interesting twist. And that twist is around your father, who had been deceased for I don't know how many years when you made this move.
Yeah.
And how it is that your mother and these other siblings find their way to this obscure little town in Northern California. I mean, it's not a place where a lot of people just move as a family. Like, that's just not how it is there.
Yeah.
And you discovered during your time on the mountain that your father has this deep relationship with Mount Shasta. I don't want to say too much because I want you to tell the story.
No, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. It was that was the most beautiful full circle to this whole experience is this connection. Yeah. So my father passed away when I was 22. And of course, naturally it was a pretty heartbreaking experience, as it would be for, anyone losing one of their parents. And it shook me for a while, and a lot of unanswered questions as you go through life. And wishing that they were there, to watch you and witness you go through your own evolutions and growing and everything, But with that first year that I was out here, I had been, no, I'm sorry, I'd been here for a full year. Of course, didn't really do much because everything was still primarily shut down. And so, that the early part of the second year, I started working with a retreat center out here, and well, that's neither here nor there. But really, like it introduced me more to like getting back into life a little bit, meeting new people, and I had a new friend that I'd met, and we decided to go for a hike on Mount Shasta. And I go into detail about all of this in the book and in my chapter, but I had this profound experience up on the mountain that um, I still find that I'm in such an awe of, because it was really the details again are in the book, so I encourage you to get it. But I can't just say I saw my dad, but got to experience my dad up on the mountain in a way that healed a lot of the brokenness that I felt from the night that he passed away. And having confirmation of all this spiritual, or even the connection that I had to spirit in all these different ways. Like, I was very nature oriented growing up. I had a lot of communications with animals and nature, and to be up there on the mountain in this totally like random spot, like we went and like to kind of like just followed our guides to this spot past South Gate, over on these other two ridges, and like we were probably within like 2 or 3 hours from summit. And that's where it happened, and just like had this full experience where I got to just feel him again, and had such amazing closure to like, he's here. I don't know if he ever personally had a relationship with the mountain, but like the mountain kind of showed me that he was there in a lot of ways, or in the mountain, or in the inner earth, or whether that's heaven. A lot of people can connect telos with heaven, just this experience that he was there. And I finally got to say, okay, well, maybe he was never that disconnected from it. Yeah, he was gone in the physical plane, but having that experience just filled so many like crevices in my heart that was broken the night that he did pass. And that was the most beautiful part about my connection with the mountain. And it's only grown since then. Like I said, that was early on. So learning how to work with the mountain, and how to work more with spirit and trust, and have that faith that, you know, God, goddess, the universe brings you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. And that was my confirmation that I'm supposed to be here. And then, of course, everything took off from there. I have a business now. I got to be a part of this amazing book. I've met amazing people. And it just like, that was the call. It's like, oh, you are anchored here and you are here.
Yeah, so your call came in an interesting way. Like for some people, a call is very direct, like you're coming here, or hearing a voice, or stumbling upon the mountain driving by, or something like that. But it sounds like spirit was working through you in a different way. It was like, oh, there's a crisis, and I want to be near my family. Right?
Absolutely. And I give credit to my mom. I mean, she did find the call of the mountain by driving by years and years and years ago while she was in the car with my dad. And she's like, oh, isn't that beautiful? And they both kind of like awed at it and admired it. And that's what called my mom back after so many years, which so maybe it's also on
Mm.
my mom's call. Yeah.
So has she had a healing experience with the mountain like you have around your father?
We've talked about it a little bit. I wouldn't say as like um definitely profound for her, but not as like I don't know the word I'm looking for, but she's had experiences where she has finally felt him come to her and sit outside on the porch with her. I don't want to share her experience too much, just about like if it's personal to her, but she's had, yes, a lot more closure than she's had in the past. She got remarried, and she, had another, relationship, but then like it's always been my dad for her, and I just love that. And so being up here, um, yeah, has really like brought that back to her, that she's whole again in a way that she hadn't been before this. And so I know that she has dialogue with him now, and she has felt him around more, and she didn't have that before. So it's for her, I think it's not been one moment that really confirmed it. It's been this ongoing, like gentle unfoldment of the realization that he's never left. And maybe he's never left on any of us. Maybe he's been around all of us, and it's just he's waiting for us to be open to his presence.
Hmm. Big heart healing for all of you. It's really special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So in the storyline, you talk about your father's passing, that it was sudden, and that you were personally going through a rough time, and that, this left a huge hole in your life. And that on Mount Shasta, in your, let's say, this kind of awakening moment, you felt that your father is actually inside the mountain in this legendary fifth dimensional space called Telos. And I mean, this is part of the draw of Mount Shasta. So that's pretty wild
Yeah,
having,
and maybe,
you know?
yeah. And those are the kind of questions that I think I ended my chapter on. It's like, does that mean he's in there? Where do people go after they pass? Like had a very spiritual upbringing, and I always, made assumptions that I believe in reincarnation, so people just go back into that. But like, what happens when people stick around a little bit longer? Is he actually in the mountain? Was that a representative of somebody else from Telos that was like sharing his energy with me? Like, yeah, all these questions. I don't know that I believe that he's actually in there. I know other people, and I think there's one other author that has shared that she thought some of her past ones were in there, and so it just brings a lot of questions to it. Yeah, big
It's
big
pretty
question marks.
incredible that in one book with 19 stories, I believe we have, two of you had that sense of your father, being there in the mountain, your father who had passed on. And I know the other author has a very strong clarity about that. So
Yeah,
it's fascinating. So whatever it is that Mount Shasta awakens for us each individually, it seems that the medicine fits whatever it is that you are needing in your own evolution and
yeah,
your own
and
healing
precisely when
process.
you need it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what made you want to write a chapter, right? Share that with the world.
Yeah, I again, like the way that you presented it was so like meaningful that it wasn't just like just stories about the mountain and superficial or outdoorsy stuff, or like everyone enjoys it here. It's very beautiful, but the fact that you wanted to bring together people who had a message and people who wanted to share like a spiritual resonance and share their gifts from what they've gotten from the mountain, like the purpose of the book was very profound for me. And because I'd had that experience, and because I believe in, the land has the ley lines and energy work that can be done on different ley lines. I've lived in Sedona. I've spent time in Uluru, Australia, in different major energy points of the earth. I knew that I had a connection to that, and I'd heard all the stories about Lumeria and Telos and Mount Shasta being the root vortex of the world. And I knew that I didn't know what I was going to write about. I just knew I had to be a part of it. And I think that was the biggest draw, is like, I know, honestly, because I didn't know until I sat down to write, and it all came out at one time. Like I didn't know I was going to be writing about that experience with my dad. And then as I'm writing it, more and more memories come from that moment, like this kind of the whole synchronicity of it. Um, but I just knew I had to be a part of it. We're here to be, you know, representatives of our connection to spirit, universe, and I with my studies in like shamanism, like we're messengers of spirit. Anyone who has that kind of connection, I know I had that connection with the mountain, so I know I needed to share it for whoever needs to hear it. And all of us, and being part of the community of all of us sharing that transmission was very significant to me. And so I knew I had to be a part of
Yeah, it's really quite a process. After I personally just received this message from the mountain myself, like
it.
put this
Yeah.
book together, get people, tell their stories. I was like,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
I think you said, you turned around, you're like, really?
I did. I
Yeah.
literally turned around, like, you're talking to me.
That's fun. Yeah.
So yeah, part of the messaging that I feel around this book, and that's one of the reasons I'm mentioning it to you, is just for your own sharing here, and is that we live in a world that is super linear, and spiritual experiences are often discounted. And it's also a time when people are craving something beyond 3D.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to have these experiences and stop discounting them. So, your courage and willingness to come forward and share your story is a beautiful gift. It's a beautiful gift. And it is my prayer that the people who will continue reading these stories will give themselves permission to acknowledge and validate these things that happen in their inner worlds that they don't understand
Yeah.
and perhaps discount.
Yeah, that brings up such an important like point of confidence that people can have in like, no, you're not crazy. No, you're not imagining things. No, you can believe in spirit and all these synchronicities, and you can believe in yourself and have faith that what you see and what you experience on the inside is more important than anything on the outside, whether it gets validated externally or not. But like, having that reconnection back to ourselves is probably the biggest gift that she has to teach of each of us, and however that shows up for each of us, I think is really the kind of like the meaning behind it. And yeah, anyone who reads other people's stories, they're like, oh, I had something like that. Oh, that really meant that meant something. I just thought it was random. No, and those things are your guidance system from the universe. And so like that's just to me such like when you start to like awaken to that, like that's just such a gift. It's like, oh, it makes your life just feel so much more like magical and held and nurtured by this co-creative force that we are constant dialogue with. And to know that they've been talking to you, she has been talking to you this entire time. That's just a beautiful experience to then to like go back, like, oh, and just really like come forward and all that. And again, just that reconnection back to yourself. And that's what we're here for. What's
Mhm.
the 3D life versus the soul led life, like how do we bring ourselves more into our own experience?
Beautiful. And I get that that is part of your mission with your retreat company. Share more about that. How did that come to be, and what are you actually doing with all of that?
Yeah, thank you. My tagline is awaken to your divinity, because my whole ethos behind the company is to create containers of experience where people can reconnect with themselves exactly that same way. It started again when I moved out here, and that's probably the connection I was trying to make with the retreat center, just ahead of myself. But I did work for a retreat center for here for a little while, and kind of got into the business practice of it because I was doing admin and marketing with them, and they were my clients for marketing. And so I kind of learned a little bit of the ins and outs. So I didn't do it for very long before they moved. But it started to resurface this idea that I'd had back in 2015 when I had moved out there to both get certified in this healing arts modality, and also I moved out to Dallas to work with the founding family of the academy that was teaching it. So I did admin. I helped the certification process for all these other practitioners doing this modality, and then got to be, alongside the founding family, just absorbing all I could. And so when I graduated, I had this idea like, oh, how wonderful would it be to take groups around the earth, around the world, to help them with this modality. I was like fired up about it. Like I had like all this stuff written all over my walls. I had like all this like, downloaded like ideas of like of what I wanted to do in my own practice, and network with other practitioners. And then when I roundabout way, that opportunity didn't last as long as I thought it was. It was only about 2 years that I did it, and it became apparent that it wasn't the right fit. And so then that's when I got into my art and had a beautiful experience about that. But I kind of put that idea to the side. And then after I got to Shasta and started working with these retreats and meeting other people, just even in my own personal life, meeting the other like earth leaders here, and really like kind of resurfacing this desire that I'd had back then to teach and to take groups around the world. I got into coaching. This is one other thing that I kind of had let us go aside. I had finished my coaching program and was about ready to get certified before I moved out to Dallas. So I'd left that, and then I left Dallas, and I left that opportunity, or at least that idea. And so like when I started to think about retreats, that brought back two of these major aspects of my life, plus the healing arts that I've been into for the past 20 years. Like it all kind of came into this conglomeration of like this one idea of like, let's go around the world, let's do retreats, let's bring in all the other coaches and practitioners that I've like become friends with over the past few years, over the course of 10, 15 years of my life. Let's start creating containers for this, because there's one thing to like go and like see a practitioner and um or a coach or whatever, and have like these sessions, and the change that you want to do sometimes can take a long time, which is appropriate. Things take time. But also like, well, what can we do to create containers where you can have a more in-depth, deeper experience in one shot, and then have integration from there? It seems to be like more transformational, more profound, more powerful. And of course, like being in around, beautiful destinations. And I started out doing like sacred sites. And of course, I was in Mount Shasta, one of the biggest sacred sites of the world. Um, it just all kind of came together. And I love that it includes all of my interests in travel, conscious like exploration, sacred site tours, personal development, healing arts, like everything that I've ever done, I can put into this model. And I know that if I have the idea, then other people need what I have when I'm putting together. And that's what we're finding. So my company is Orion Retreats. It's based on, the ideas and ethos of human potential, which is the connection to the cosmos. And yeah, we lead retreats, we do retreat planning and marketing. We have masterminds, we have personal retreat memberships, really to bring people into the lifestyle of retreats, because that's really, you know, again, in my world, that's what I have found to be the most transformational part of like any personal growth that you can do. Just go unplug from your daily life, do something really in depth for yourself, and then come back and watch your life evolve the way you want it to.
Yeah, so beautiful. And being amongst others, typically these are group retreats, right?
Yes,
So other people
exactly.
are sharing your experience and supporting one another in this
Absolutely. I'm glad you
transformational.
said that. That's one of the most important parts about it is this community aspect. We all feel like we have to go through all this stuff alone. Oh, change is hard, but sometimes the best thing that comes out of retreat is the experience that you have within that community, the friends that you make, the conversations that you have outside of the teaching times when, someone else knows what I'm going through. There, like just that camaraderie in that community is like one of the most transformative and healing aspects of the whole thing. So I'm glad you said that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is part again of the idea of this book too, of having a group and people getting to experience each other's experiences, and readers, of course, get to do that as well.
Mhm.
And perhaps it will lead someone to say, hey, I want to go on a retreat to Mount Shasta. Maybe I should call Lauren, or any of the other leaders in this book. There are many who do retreat leadership and
Mhm.
treat facilities. And yeah, so it's an interesting combo of people, but it is really a time in our world for more community building. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
And affirming what it is that we're choosing to articulate for next steps, and what many of us are calling the new earth. And that is a subtitle for this book. So I'm curious, what is your feeling about this whole concept of the new earth? And
Yeah,
what does Shasta have to do with that?
absolutely. I love that concept. And it's such like a part of our ethos as a company and as like an internal, like they say your company is a manifestation of you. So it's very much tied into what I feel is important for humanity. Like if, I got into healing because I wanted to help people and I wanted to help um yeah, help them get past their past and anything that's keeping them back from being their highest potential. And when you take that from the microcosm back out to the macrocosm, it's like as each of us heal our own shadows, our own past, integrate our own shadows, it's not about light and dark or good and bad. It's just about being a whole person and integrating. And as each person does that, we affect the collective. So like the whole intention behind the company is to be in the realm of like creating the new earth, being the change that we wish to see in the world as we create conscious containers for true and profound transformation, change, and growth. Then those people who come to those, they go back to their home and they go back to their family, their communities, their companies, their businesses, whatever. And they even energetically are different. They've shifted, they've activated, they've, done, cleared a bunch of stuff. And that emits a certain frequency to the people around them that they, you know, can palpably feel sometimes, but also it helps like even how they speak will maybe they'll say something differently that will help somebody else. And like it's just like that whole ripple effect of how we effectively change the world. We can't go out and like, I'm going to go do this and be an advocate. And I used to be a huge, advocate. What do they call that? I'm losing my words.
Activist?
Activist. Thank you. Yes. Like I thought that that was my path. And I just realized that I can't, one person can't do that. A community of people can. But what does it start with? it starts with who we are on the inside first. And we can't affect that change on the outside until we do the internal work on the inside. So by creating these experiences for people where people can have that, reconnect with themselves, show up better for themselves, and then the world around them, then that's when world peace comes in. That's when the new earth can be birthed. You know, it's very much of a practical model as it is a new age, new earth model, because a lot of people think that that's out there woo, and I don't think it is. I think this is bridging the gap of like truly like what can we do to create that world that we do want to see. It starts with how we behave, how we think, how we love, how more, you know, how heart-centered that we are. If we want that for the world, we have to do that. And I think that's a missing piece, and certainly was for me when I was younger. Is like, you know, I wanted to do all this stuff, and it's like, it starts with us first. You know, it definitely
It's
does.
a frequency shift is really what it is, right? And there are many in the evolutionary path, but the mountain holds a certain kind of frequency that seems to spark changes for people quickly. Would you say?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that it's an accelerator. I think that because it's, you know, one of the primary vortices of the world, that a lot of people say it's the root chakra, some people say it's the crown. I believe it's the root chakra of the crown one that gets you, no, it's at the crown chakra, but the root chakra, the next level of you know, like dimensional chakras, there's a whole thing to it. I kind of get into the scene stuff about it, but I do think that because it's so potent and powerful here, whatever happens here, there's, you know, the earth has a grid. You know, obviously we know about ley lines, and a lot of people know about ley lines, but it's a crystalline grid as well. Like when I lived in Sedona, there was quartz that ran out from Sedona to all these other points on the earth. So if you think about that, like Mount Shasta, all these earth vortexes, they're connected to that. So the work that people do here affects the collective for better or for worse. So we have to be very intentional about what we're holding space for in these sacred areas, but it affects the collective. And she brings us lessons, and she brings us awareness and love and this mother nurturing energy, and heals things in us that we couldn't necessarily have done on ourselves because it would take that much longer. But because she's an accelerator and it is a frequency shift, that it just helps us evolve that much more quickly. And then we take those transmissions out. I think we talked about it. When we get those light codes, we take those transmissions out into the world wherever we go, and then we affect that area. We become the sacred site ourselves as we go around and travel. And so to have like an entire like percentage of the the you know, Earth's population carrying light codes because they came to these different sacred sites and did this work, or came to Mount Shasta, then that's profound. And that's how, you know, that's how we're going to make it out of this.
How we're going to make it out of this. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on right now for the world, and
Yeah,
this is
wow.
our opportunity to show up in better ways.
Mhm, mhm. So I hear all kinds of stories that people have around Mount Shasta, and some of it happens, you know, in a weekend, or literally. I remember some woman, as I was doing a lot of inquiry around this topic, some woman on Facebook just shared about like, whoa, I was just driving by and I stopped and I had like massive healing happened in her life. And it's pretty fascinating. I know I didn't grow up with this kind of knowledge, you know, that these things happened for people because of a location.
Yeah. Yeah. When you really sit down and think about it, it's like, can something really have that profound of an effect on us? It's like, yes. Yes, absolutely can.
Yeah. And so maybe so that just simply readership and these interviews and people getting to plug into the mountain through others, such as yourself, that they will be able to have these kinds of openings. And if they want to
Yeah.
go deeper, you know, they find a way to do that. But
Yeah.
it sure is interesting and exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do recall, actually, now that you say that too, the first time that I saw Mount Shasta, I was driving down from Bend, Oregon, because I lived there for a little while, and driving down 97, there's something about that view where the mountain is literally coming out of the highway in front of you. And I remember just like feeling like I was in another dimension. Like the clouds had opened up. It was kind of a cloudy day, but the clouds opened up all around it. And I just remember going like, what in the world is that? And I think that's a common experience, you know, and
Uh-huh.
it absolutely, it's a, like you said, it's a frequency thing. It's a transmission. Like it's whether it's coming from in the mountain or just the fact that it's like so beautiful, like it could be in any number of things, but you know, we've learned that there's definitely a transmission to it. And if your heart is open to receiving it, and sometimes even if you're not open to receiving it, you still get the benefit of it. Because it's Mama Gaia in physical form. I mean, this is her beauty, what she created.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that earth component too, because that is, to me, part of the greatness of Mount Shasta is an opportunity to really connect with Gaia so deeply, because it is the purity and the sanctity of the nature there that is largely responsible for what happens, right?
Yeah.
One of the other authors talked about just having an experience. She'd been feeling like super isolated and lost and sad in her life, and she just went on a hike in Mount Shasta. Like she wasn't even having some wild, mystical experience of Saint Germain dropping in her lap or illuminating light or anything like that. She just hiking along, and she's like had this experience of like, I'm part of all this, and it healed her so deeply. It's
Yeah.
really beautiful, the various ways that we can be touched by Mount Shasta and other places if we have that opening. I'm in North Carolina now, and after 4 years in Mount Shasta, and I'm really focused on the land. Yeah, just getting to know the land here and
Mm-hmm.
what is special medicine. More to come.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to see how, I mean, we talked about it too, is like you're carrying those light codes of Mount Shasta with you as you do grid work out there. I know that's why you're out there, and being with your family was a huge call, but like the work that you're doing just energetically, just by being there from Shasta is profound.
Yeah, yeah. There's stuff going on that I'm not quite ready to talk about, but it is rather getting very deliberate and very clear, what that relationship that comes through me, like you were saying earlier about we become these channels of, and I feel that. And I've met people here that are like, whoa, I just feel Mount Shasta all over you, because they've been
Amazing.
there. So it's like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. There is something to all this for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like we should begin to wrap. Is there anything else that you feel compelled to speak to around, the message of this mountain and your unique voice around that?
I would really just like to share to people, like, I mean, the whole point, and the whole point about everything, the all and the all is to trust yourself and to trust your heart and to follow your inner guidance. And whether it's coming to Shasta, hearing about Shasta, whether you get a sign from the universe to go to this one bookstore or go to this one coffee shop or whatever it is, like follow those inner guidance things, because that's what we're all here talking about. It's the magic that can show up for you when you just like believe in, and I say this because it comes from a place of like, in some of my stressful times, like it's just go, go, go. And it's like accomplish or do or survive even, like, and really we're missing out on so much of life, and we're not, in tune with ourselves, and we're not present enough in our own lives to see these things. And so when you have those magical moments, honor that and just honor yourself. And that's what this whole thing is about. And your life can change and what, evolve exponentially just by just tapping into your inner self. And I think that
Mm.
that's really important, that if I could step into my body when I was 22 going through what I was going through, if someone had told me that something beautiful would come of that, and that I would have signposts along the way that I may not understand at the time, but that will make sense later, then, maybe during the time I could have gotten through it easier. I made it, obviously, but it just ended up being such a beautiful experience. And that no matter what's going on, there's a higher order and higher purpose for everything.
Indeed. Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for articulating that so clearly. And always enjoy being with you, Lauren, and
Me
chatting and
too.
sharing. And so
You
we'll
too.
sign off for now.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for having me. And I just can't wait to see all the different ways that this book is going to be in the hands of people who really want it and need it, and and beyond, and everything that it's here to have been created for.
Yeah.
Thank you again for putting it together.